Good morning. It's July 27th on the Alan Osborne Show. And what you see behind me is the Walton County Zoning Board of Adjustments, meaning these are the people, get that thing off there, there it goes. These are the people who decide if you should get an adjustment from the comp plan. So let me set that up. The chair is Joe Johnson. Now, my understanding is Joe's had this position for over 20 years. And Joe is very comfortable in it. But Joe, I'm Alan Osborne. I'm about to make you uncomfortable as crap in that seat. And you and Danny and your little munchkins, if you want to talk to me about it, I'll tell you the same damn thing. You've got to go. Now at this meeting right here, I'm going to play you what Joe says. This is a couple years ago, and the reason this is important, I'll give you the date. It's a little while back. But Joe's still chairing the board, and why it's important is this. Joe has been on a constant lead while using his position as chairman of a volunteer citizens board. Volunteer. And what that board does is protect us from people putting things that are against the plans that we've adopted in this county. And I'm about to show you that there are no checks and balances. And this is the same thing that's wrong with law enforcement. It's the same thing that's wrong with code enforcement, is that we have nepotism that runs so deep that you have no avenue to turn to. And I'll show you that in a different show. But the next board BCC meeting, let's see who's really up there. Boots and Tony can vote. Joe Johnson should be removed from the board. And if they don't want to vote because there's an election, I don't care. But this right here is completely unacceptable of what's going on. And I believe at a minimum, I think Joe Johnson and Jeff Clark should be removed right away. I can't read Charles, I got your name. I can't remember what your name is, but I think you were pretty much in on it. You should go ahead and resign too. So first, I'm going to take you to this meeting, and then I'm going to tell you about the one that happened 2 days ago. So hold on just a second. Okay, we're going to pick up at the meeting, and a project just came in for a variance. It's the Zoning Board of Adjustments. That's who grants variances, basically. It's an adjustment to allow you to do what you want. Now, Joe Johnson, this is his normal behavior, is going to look at this woman and say, "Tonight's your lucky night," and he's basically telling her, "We let this go through because you didn't open your mouth." And listen to what he tells her. I think he tells her basically to the effect that, see what happens when a woman just sits there and has to be quiet. In fact, he tries to joke it off, but you can tell the attorney that follows wants to let the female with him present, and he says so based on Mr. Johnson's previous comments, and he says it in a manner that you can tell Mr. Kaufman, the attorney, knows that Mr. Johnson is far out of line. So let's pick this up, and I hope you can hear this because the county records everything in minimum volume, so I'm going to do my best to get it to swap over here. So listen up to what Joe says.
You're like a nut. You're welcome. That's what happens when they that the guy. I had to say that. I only joke.
So listen, everybody starts laughing and he thinks it's hilarious. So does the two board members, the one to our left and the Mr. Clark to his right, because they believe that this voluntary board is their power to wield at will. This is wrong. Now listen, they joke about it and try to laugh it off, but when we get to the end, watch what happens when we come back up here, and watch what the attorney says as they come in here. Now who's going to be coming in here? There's the lady he just embarrassed. That's the one that kept her mouth shut. Now listen to what this attorney says. That board member, Mr. Jeff, there has a conflict.
Hold on, Robert. Hold on.
He just needed to go. I may let him listen. I'd like me to just go on your last comment, actually. Okay.
So the attorney corrects Joe and says, I should let a woman present this in lieu of your last comment. And Mr. Clark has a conflict because this is the kind of business Mr. Clark is in. Isn't that right, Mr. Clark? So I'm a citizen and don't give a damn. I want some fair government. I want the rules to be in favor of somebody doing development when they're actually following the rules. And when they don't want to follow the rules, I want the county to tell them no. Or what they want to do will harm my community. I expect my commissioner to stand up and say, this is a bad project for this community, because they're supposed to know their community. But these people don't care, and I'll demonstrate that later. So this was the first meeting. That I don't want to make this show too long, but this is just, that right there was unacceptable. And Tony and Trey and Boots, who are all running for election, let this man stay in this position, because I don't think Brad and Donna want him in there. In fact, this is the man who takes out all the bad ads on Donna and I think Dan Curry and other people like that. This is the man that's using his position on a volunteer board with the county seal above him of pride, preservation, and conservation, and he thinks it's all a joke. In fact, he doesn't think it's a joke. He's actually worried. And so I'm going to bring you to the meeting 2 days ago. You can hardly hear what they're saying, so I know it won't record. But if you go to the July 25th meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustments, the first minute and at the very end, you're going to see Mr. Johnson lean over to Jeff Clark. The microphones are on. They're there for a meeting. He knows he's in a recorded room, and yet the arrogance of him, here is what he says to Jeff Clark with Charles over there leaning in to listen. Before the meeting, he says, he starts telling him about something that's going on, and Jeff Clark says, you're supposed to lie like that during an election. Really, Jeff? That's the kind of person you are? And Joe says, these people, they want to stop growth. And the they that they're talking about is certain commissioners. It's the they that Joe's running ads against. In fact, he says, they've got their piece of the pie and they don't want no more growth. End quote. No, Joe, us citizens that live here, we understand the delicate balance between tourists, the community, and the growth of this county, and we want responsible growth, not growth where the taxpayers are figuring out the infrastructure that needs to be there after the developers have made the money and left us holding the bag. That's what we want, Joe, but you want short-term gains and long-term losses for a place where most of the people are going to be affected out of it. You'll be lying in the grave when these kids are still paying off these infrastructure bills. And we're going to have another collapse because we've got, and these people all answer to Matt Carpenter. Well, who's Matt Carpenter? He's the chief of planning who lost his real estate license over fraud, but he's in charge of all our real estate. So Joe goes on to say they want to stop growth. They've got their piece of the pie. They don't want no more growth. And he goes on to tell Jeff and some of the others, this could be one of our last meetings before August 20th, is what he's referring to. Because he knows if they don't keep a vote of 3, these phony baloney boards and how they're being run, that stuff's going to come to an end. You only have to count to 3 to control everything in this county. The county commission, in order to audit the sheriff's money, would need a vote of 3. They would need a vote of 3 to change the sheriff's budget. So why do you think Mike Atkinson is so involved in the politics of which commissioners matter? The same reason this man just said, Joe Johnson. For history of the county, Joe, aren't you ex-sheriff Ralph Johnson's brother? And didn't you want your brother out of office because he was trying to investigate you? I mean, I'm just asking the question, Joe. I'm not making some accusations. But you and I invite you on the Alan Osborne show to talk about your position with the county and growth so I can point out what an actual idiot that you are because you've lived your whole life here. The rest of us have been out here making it in the real world without the assistance of our last name, friends, or DNA. Most of us that moved here and invested our money and had our children, we got our promotions and our place in life on merit. And that's what we want for our kids and community. But we don't want this where you're telling other board members that the jig could be up basically and y'all could be gone because you're a free pass to what lawyers are selling to developers. Exceptions to the rule. So he goes on in that meeting when you go watch it at the beginning. This is all in the first minute or two. The lawyer that's there reminds Joe that it's time to have the meeting, and Joe gets pissed off because he's King Joe, and he says, we'll do it when I get ready. Well, we're ready to throw him off, and we got to show up at the next meeting and say, fire this clown. We don't need to wait to November like he's worried about. His statements alone show that he can't be fair and equitable and can't be relied upon as a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. He's jaded. And he's using his position for politics, not to be a volunteer, a board member without a position. He further tells them, I'm having a conversation. Yeah, you're having a conversation on our time because it's time for the meeting, Joe. And so that's what he says to begin the meeting. And after the meeting is over, and he says, as soon as he lays the gavel while he's on the county microphone, he says to the crowd and to the board, the upcoming elections are important. We have important upcoming elections. If this board wants to be in existence in December, meaning when the commissioners leave, if they don't stay in office, the ones we need to stay in our phony baloney volunteer boards where we wield power that can make us money, if this board wants to be, as Joe says, in existence in December, then pick the candidates that support this board. What do you mean, this board? You're not elected, jackass. None of us people picked you. And we shouldn't be picking candidates that are going to keep some people who we didn't elect in a position to do us wrong as property owners. To grant variances based on who these attorneys are and developers. That's what you're about, Joe. That's what Alan Osborne says you're about. And in my protected freedom of speech opinion, you're a piece of shit. And you're part of the reason that we could just have had enough of this. This is Hunter Biden. This is a Biden family thing. This is people who think they're in power because of who they are instead of what they serve the people for. I'm sick of this. He tells them they better pick the candidates that support this board. And he further goes on to tell an attorney at that same meeting, the same attorney he had insulted before, this board has now trained you to advance to the next level. Since when is the People's Volunteer Variance Board here to train developers' attorneys on what to do and what they're going to do and what they're going to say? I've had enough of this. Sorry for the language, but it's deserved. Clark, you three right there that were having the conversation, and go watch too. He's also showing the other board members the negative information and ads that he's running on current candidates and current commissioners. So he's up there electioneering before the board with other board members that he's the chairman of. He's showing them these ads. Dang, I don't want to cover you up. I want people to see you for what you are. There must be a reason your brother told me he wanted to investigate and put you in jail. There must be a reason. But there's a reason for the people to throw. I don't know about that, Joe, but there's a reason to have your ass thrown off this board. Run an ad about me and see if I care, Joe. Go ahead. I can put you on every single show. Every one of you board members who stood for this should quit. I don't think Bill could hear them, but I know you other board members heard it. It's happened too many times, and why are you up there doing this? Jim, did you hear them? Jump on their ass, Jim. Why is Joe Johnson getting away with this? Maybe Jim and Paul couldn't hear it, but I know Jeff and Charles could. Those three in the center, the other people may have been having conversations, but you people, You heard what he was doing. You know it's wrong, and you're just like Tony Anderson, who didn't report the racist text, who didn't make affidavits. Tony Anderson, all you need to know about Tony Anderson is contained, or just one of the things you need to know about Tony Anderson is contained in Tony Anderson's ethics complaint, and you need to watch that stuff. So we've had enough of this. This needs to be an issue at the next BCC meeting for all the citizens. I'm going to be putting out a video on what's broken in law enforcement. We know what's broken on the commission. Boots, I'm sorry, you can't serve. Look, if you can't vote for Dan in that race, I'll give you this. If you've got to be a Boots or Trey guy, be a Boots guy. Be a Boots gal. But that's not real change. But for God's sakes, don't pick Trey. He's an embarrassment. And I'm going to go into very detailed on a lot of Trey's decisions while he was commissioner. They're outright embarrassing. From trying to, one of Trey's first acts was to try to build a boat ramp right next to his restaurant on your money. Hate like that. Forgot about that one, Trey, but I'm coming back to it. Anyway, this is a problem in the county. This is a problem with the same people being in. These people know law enforcement's not going to investigate them no matter what they do. Mikey doesn't investigate anything that has to do with development. He doesn't do that type of white-collar crime. He won't investigate Matt Carpenter giving people certificates of compliance when they're not compliant. Because even though banks lend money based on that, that's things that Mike Atkinson will not do as your sheriff, and that won't be told to you by his overpaid PIO. Till tomorrow on the Alan Osborne Show, when we try to keep them straight out there, because you can't make this shit up. If I could write a screenplay like this, I'd be in Hollywood making a fortune writing screenplays. But this is all true, and that's why sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. Y'all keep them straight out there. They can't make this shit up. Anything that has to do with Grand Fountain is a pile, and there's a lot of people in Walton County tied up in that pile. Till next time, I'm Alan Osborne.